Ready your weapon!
What's up YouTube? Welcome back to my channel everybody, and this is my review of Warhammer 40k's Boltgun. Now, if you haven't heard of this game before, this game is a retro-inspired boomer shooter, or a retro FPS game, kind of similar to Doom, but it's based off the Warhammer 40k universe. And so now I'm just going to start out by saying this, that I don't really know a whole lot about Warhammer or any of its lore or anything like that. So if you're in the same kind of boat as me, and you like boomer shooters or retro shooting games, I definitely say that that's not a problem. You're still going to really probably enjoy this game if you pick it up. Now, this game normally retails for about $30 Canadian, but is currently on sale on the PlayStation Store for about $18 Canadian. And now the game also has a recently released DLC pack that retails for $7.99 Canadian, called The Forges of Corruption, and that basically just adds an entirely new chapter for you to play through. So now in the base game you get 3 different chapters to play through, and each chapter has about maybe 8 to 10 levels in each, and you can choose your difficulty each time prior before playing. Now, I did find the first 2 difficulties pretty simple, the Emperor Protects and My Armor is Contempt. So if you're looking for more of a challenge, I would definitely recommend probably playing on the Emperor's Mercy difficulty or hard. And now the very hard mode, Exterminatus, is pretty freaking nuts. Now if you want a real challenge, definitely play on that one, but it is way harder than even my Emperor's Mercy, so just be warned. Like, it is ruthless. And they've also recently added Horde mode, but it only has one arena to play through, the Sanctum of Slaughter, and you basically just choose your difficulty before playing through, and there's not really too much else to really say about that. You survive different waves of enemies, and get more and more weapons thrown at you between each wave, similar to Nazi Zombies or any other game of that fashion. So now, let's get into the very first cutscene of this video game, and I'll just be quiet for a moment.
Forget nothing. Forgive no one.
Nothing, once touched by the hand of chaos, remains untainted. You are under the dominion of the Ordo Malleus to assist my investigations into a world that has already felt that fell influence. Graia has been under the close watch of the Inquisition since the Grim Skull War. The Forge world remains largely secure, but we have picked up concerning energy readings in the surrounding system. I have my suspicions, although we have not had sufficient time to pinpoint the origin of these foul energies. While most of the planet remains unaffected, it is my belief that rogue elements within the Adeptus Mechanicus may have been experimenting with a surviving fragment of Inquisitor Drogon's power source. Your mission is to assist me in locating a fragment of the power source. While I consider this threat extremely serious, your superiors have seen fit to second only a handful of you to my supervision. In the absence of a larger force, we should pray to the Emperor that this does not develop into a more dire situation. This servo skull will guide you. In Commodus here is one of the few sanctified and preserved from the purging of Drogon's heretical archives. Together, you will search sites where communication has become sporadic. Should you encounter any opposition, you may assume they have been tainted by the ruinous powers. Suffer not the heretic to live. While I continue my investigations aboard the Crown, you will be deployed to a habitation zone we lost contact with several cycles ago. You should assume the situation to be extremely hostile. Beware. We do not know how far the taint of the arch-enemy spreads.
Alright, so now as you can see, so the game does have quite a few little storyline videos in between each of the different chapters, and now the game's not really too filled with a whole lot of lore and story, so if you're really one of those people into like a big story, there's not much, but there's enough for it to tie into the game. You understand what's going on. So basically, you're sent down to this planet to investigate. Your ship crashes and blows up, and you're the only lone space marine left alive to complete the mission. Now, I really do love the art style of this game, especially on the cutscenes. Like, they did a really good job, and the voice acting was also really, really good. And now, they also added this cool little feature here in the settings where you can make the game look more retro and more pixelated, and even change like the color palettes. So like if you wanted to, you could make it almost look like this, so it's like almost like you're playing a DOS game and you can barely see anything. You know, like to each their own. I usually just play the game with just a little bit of extra pixelization and a bit of regular color, just because the environments and just the different levels and just everything in this game just looks really, really good, even though it's supposed to be made to look old. They did such a fantastic job on it. And now, this game does have health pickups and armor pickups, but there are no items that you can just carry with you to heal whenever you want. And now you can jump, unlike your classic Doom games, and also there's a dash move which you can use to bash into enemies, and also help you reach higher platforms and hard to reach areas. And now the only thing you have when you come out of your spaceship is basically your chainsaw or chainsword weapon, and then a few grenades that you can use. And now the maximum inventory you can hold for grenades is actually quite limited, so do make sure that you use them quite frequently when playing this game, as you will be also finding them pretty often, so either you use them or you lose them. So now the level design is really quite linear, very similar to Doom. You go throughout the levels and you usually have to try to find key cards in order to open up different areas to keep progressing farther and farther throughout the level. As you just see there was a door I had to click a button on to open, then rush through in order to get through to get the red key to open this door. And then once you finish progressing throughout the level, of course you're going to find the exit door, just like any of your typical old boomer shooters, and you'll be graded on how well you did, how many secrets, how many kills you got, and how much time it took you to complete the level. And now the one thing I find this game does extremely well is introducing the player to new and harder mechanics and new guns slowly and slowly over time, and just the atmosphere. Like, just look at this. Just listen to the music they have when you first find the Boltgun in this room. And just the lighting, like the whole layout of the room. They did like such an amazing job at all the textures and just the whole atmosphere of the entire game. And then this next spot here, you have to jump down a shaft, and then of course you land right on top of an enemy. So yeah, you can stomp on their heads, just like the Super Mario Brothers. So the game teaches you basically as you go along without really giving you a tutorial, which is actually kind of cool. And now, just like in typical Doom fashion, you know, when you finally find a new weapon, what happens? Oh look, a bunch of enemies spawn in. So here we have two variants of the enemies called horrors. We have the blue horrors, which are just basically melee enemies that run at you, and the pink horrors, who are bigger, badder versions of the little blue counterparts, and they shoot projectiles at you, and then when you kill them, they ended up spawning two blue horrors for you to have to fight. Kind of cool though. And now, just like the retro shooters of old, of course, there's always secrets to be discovered, different types of power-ups, such as the vortex grenades and the machinist spirit. Now, if you hit your start button, you can go down into the help section, and the game will tell you what all the different power-ups do. And now, for instance, the machine spirit powers up your weapons, but machine spirits can be unpredictable. Every weapon reacts in a different way. So that one's kind of interesting. So you kind of have to pick it up on a different weapon and kind of guess and figure out what it does. Now, there's also special ammo that you can pick up for the bolt gun, which actually makes the bolt gun very viable all throughout the entire game. Unlike a lot of other shooters, where your starting weapon just keeps becoming more and more useless as you progress farther and farther throughout the game and you never use it anymore. Now, majority of the pickups are just instant use. As soon as you pick them up, you get a buff for a limited time, except for the machinist spirit. This one will last for the entire level for whatever weapon you had equipped when you picked it up. So now we're going to look at the bolt gun with the machinist spirit on it. So now it does 1 extra damage and has a larger clip. So I figured out this one done. Now you might see some of these enemies here I'm fighting. These are the lesser plague toads. Basically these toads are kind of like bullet sponges, and they spit out acid at you. And now here's one of the more temporary pickups. So this is different ammo for your bolt gun, and it kind of makes your bolt gun into like a limited time chain gun. And now there's 3 different kinds that you can get with this. So this is like the Kraken bolt gun ammo, and I had no idea what any of these did until I actually hit the start button and when it looked to see what each ammo actually does. Now you can't get extra ammo for these, you basically use them and then you switch back to just your regular old bolt gun afterwards. The best one of these temporary bolt gun ammo pickups that I liked was the vengeance rounds, as this one actually makes it so that your bullets can like keep going after you hit a target. You can like shoot right through like hordes of enemies, and this thing's just freaking awesome. So now, as I said earlier, when you pick up the machine spirit, it affects each weapon differently, and you will have that pickup for the entire level. So when you do it with the shotgun, it makes your bullets actually bounce off things and ricochet, which is actually really cool. You have to be careful because you can actually end up hurting yourself with your own bullets if you get this pickup. But it truly is just the little simple things like that they add to this game that just show how much attention to detail they had when they were creating it. So next, I'm going to show you off some of the more common enemies you see in the game. So this is like the Chaos Terminator. Now you may notice I started out this fight by throwing something at him. That was called a crack grenade. It's basically like an impact grenade that just does heavy damage to whatever target you hit with it. And now those guys are basically almost like your little chain gun enemies in Doom, and they're like an upgrade from the regular Chaos Space Marines that you fight. And now you also fight these weird creatures called flamers that shoot burning rings of fire at you. Now I want to show you one of the more temporary power-ups that you can get. This one's the Aura of Doom, and what it does is increases your damage temporarily as well as decreases the damage that you receive. And now you might notice here that I just picked up the plasma gun. And now this thing is almost more like kind of like a rocket launcher in a sense, as it does splash damage, so when you hit things you can actually damage yourself if you're too close to it. And it also tends to overheat a little bit, and it has a bit of a slowdown for you to end up switching to another weapon when using it, so do keep that in mind. Now when you get the machine spirit with this weapon, what I think it does is just gives you an extra 6 bullets in the clip. You might do maybe a little bit more explosive damage. I'm not even really too sure. But now, the current theme you're going to notice with this game is a lot of times whenever you're going through the linear levels, when you come across a weapon pickup or when you finally enter a boss area, something called a purge starts. You end up getting locked inside of basically an arena, very similar to what Horde mode is, and you have to defeat every single enemy before you can move on to the next area of the game. And naturally, a lot of these areas, some of them are easier to complete than others, and some are a lot more difficult to fight in, and some of them are just awesome to play in. And now you might notice here that I've picked up another new weapon, and now this is the Heavy Bolter. Now this is basically just your chain gun, and this thing just gives 250 rounds, no reloading. You can just shoot away hordes of enemies to your heart content, and it is awesome. And now if you get the machinist spirit with this one, what I believe it does is it just makes you move a little faster, because normally when you carry this weapon, your movement speed is quite slower than when you're carrying any other weapon. And now, the one gripe I do of this game is a lot of the enemies just seem to be kind of repeats of the same enemy. Like, so now here is just your regular Plague Toad. Now you might have remembered I showed you the lesser Plague Toad earlier. And now here is another enemy who's a big prick. This guy's called the Aspiring Champion. Now he looks very similar to the Chaos Space Marines, but he charges at you and shoots rockets. But what makes this guy more of a prick than all the other ones is that as soon as you kill him, he respawns at full health and maybe becomes the Chosen Champion, and now he can deal massive damage to you, especially on higher game mode. So do make sure you blow up this prick's body whenever possible, so you don't have to deal with this as often. It seems really random. Then another enemy that they've added in are these things called the Ambles. Kind of look like giant ant monsters. So these things charge at you, and look at that damage it did. Like, wow, over 100 damage just from that one charge. These things are nasty, and you definitely want to dispatch them as quickly as possible. And then later on, you get to meet the even worse version of the Amble, the Ancient Amble. Another repeated enemy, just different and more powerful and a huge bullet sponge. But at least by the time when you bump into these guys, you'll have an even better arsenal. Like now, you can see I'm using the Vengeance Launcher, which is basically just a sticky grenade gun. Now this thing's great for just like popping out of cover and like shooting a few grenades at the enemy and then like disappearing again and just slowly peppering down the health of bosses. Definitely a very good weapon indeed. And then you finally get the Melting Gun. Now this thing is awesome. It just shoots big flames of fire at people, and it can literally just fry right through like rows and rows of enemies. It is amazing. Just massive damage to bosses. It's also really great for taking out these float drones, these flying enemies that just spew acid at you everywhere. And then eventually you get the Cavalier, I think I'm saying that right. It's basically a red laser gun. Now you can basically tap this thing and it'll one-shot all weak enemies, or you can just hold it down for a continuous spray of a laser beam that'll just really just start erasing some enemies' health very quickly. But I find it's better used. It's quickly dispatching hordes of lesser enemies quickly when they're all rushing at you. Now you may notice there was another new enemy, and that was the Exalted Flamer. Yes, another repeat. And now we got the best gun in the game, the Grav Cannon. Now this thing just shoots a big, huge green laser beam and will fry every single thing in its sight, but ammo for all these last weapons is very scarce, which is probably a good thing because this game would be way too easy if you had unlimited ammo for the Melter or the Grav Cannon, for example. And now what this game does really well, I know I've already said it many times, is just the architecture and the atmosphere and the music. It just sets the overall mood for the game, and every single area you walk into just suits the game so well. And it's one of the very few games that I've ever played where I would walk into a new area and then I just actually stop and just start looking at things either prior to fighting or after the battle, and just holy smokes, just look at this. Even the caves look really good. And then you also get into these desert caves later on, which also look very good. All the castle areas are kind of like the church areas, or the areas that look like old military destroyed bases. Freaking awesome. The industrial area is awesome. And now even when you're outside, when you're in this kind of Grand Canyon area, this part of the map, it still is absolutely stunning just to look at. And it's really easy just to notice just the meticulous amount of detail that the game designers here just put into every single map and every single area of this game that you get to explore. I don't think I've seen a game that has actually really done this better. And on top of that, this game's not even a AAA title, and it does it better than some of those that we've seen in the last few years. And on top of that, the entire time I played through this game, I don't even think I've came across a single bug or really bad glitch or anything like that, which I normally find a lot of those in a lot of games when they first come out. And now even after the update, the game still has been running smoothly. I have not had a single issue, no frame skipping, no nothing. And then now even when you're exploring the corridors and areas of this game, they do a really good job. Look at how they changed the music here. We're going through this kind of green putrid area with all the death tones. Just freaking awesome. And then this room, you walk in and whoa, what's that? A bunch of blood and guts just fall down from the ceiling if you go to get the secret, and there's all this blood and skulls over the wall. Just freaking morbid, but freaking awesome. And now we're going to get into some of the more gameplay mechanics that they've added into the different levels of the game. So now some are really simple, some you see frequently, others you only see once. This one's pretty simple. It's just this laser trap room, and there's these bunkers on the side of the room with enemies inside of them who are kind of shooting at you. I actually kind of think that this might actually be an homage to another old shooter that might have had a room in it like this. If you do know which game this might be from, do mention it down in the comments below, because this room does seem very familiar to me for whatever reason. And then now there's other areas of the game, like this industrial kind of metal platforming zone here with all these metal grates you have to walk across that are broken and just jump around. And now this is just a really simple platforming section, but there's tons of enemies all around you have to shoot at. But again, the atmosphere is really good, and this is one of the earlier ones you get come across where you have to platform and jump onto stuff. And then you get into areas like this one where it's a little bit more harder in order to traverse the area with much smaller platforms you have to jump across. And there's also molten lava around that you can also fall down and fall inside. And a lot of these jumps are actually a lot harder to make than you might think, and you will fall down quite a bit the first time doing a lot of these. And then of course, you're going to have areas where there's platforms over lava you have to jump at in order not to get hurt by the hazard, or other areas where you need to flip a switch in order to make a platform come in order to take you across a hazard in order to get to the next area of the map. Or other times, there's just a platform you have to start to go across just to get to where you have to go. And of course, what does the game do? They have a ton of enemies spawn up all around you, start shooting at you. They have flying enemies start coming at you. You're stuck on this platform, trying to fight them all off without dying. And then, sure enough, what's the platform bringing you to? A bunch more monsters are just sitting there waiting to kill you. Just freaking awesome and just classic, old school, shoot 'em up action. They have other platforming sections like this one here, where every time you jump, the wall starts trying to push you off, so you fall into these gears down below, which will kill you instantly. And then of course, what happens is there's a whole bunch of chaos marines that just spawn through a hidden door. They're just ready to blow you away. And then, another area, you can jump down and the walls start closing in on you, and you just have to run through it really quick. just kind of cool that they added all these little things in, even though some of them are quite simple. Now this next one was actually one of my favorite ones. So this one, you jump down to this pit, and it's kind of like a maze, and you hear the sound. And now, like, I didn't even realize what exactly was happening, but I knew, like, that sound wasn't good. For sure, you know? So I'm going around through here, like, sure enough, you even bump into, like, giant plague toads and, like, some bigger enemies. And then, all of a sudden, you notice, oh, wait, that roof's getting lower and lower. And then, yeah, you guessed it, you know? You end up dying, you get squished by it. This probably happened a few times until you figure out how to get through it. And now, there's this level. Oh, I hated this level. Okay, now thank God, well, thank the Emperor that they added the way to see a waypoint, because this particular level was freaking hell before they added it, okay? You were literally stuck in limbo hell. You're jumping through all these different purple portals, and you have no idea where the hell you're going. Because, like, if you go back through the same portal, it'll bring you somewhere different. Then you have these screamers and the Zen-Tech pricks flying down, like, you can't even jump over to the next area trying to knock you off the whole platforms. And then when they succeed in doing that, you have no idea where you are. You're just constantly running through all these different purple portals, and they just keep bringing you to the same places. Some of them bring you into places where you're upside down. Sometimes they spawn you just in the middle of, like, nowhere, and you fall somewhere, like, completely different, and you just have no idea where the hell you're supposed to go. And you're just literally stuck in freaking limbo trying to figure it out. Remember, I turned this off several times after trying it. The very first time I was running through this game, and I was like, really got to a point at one point where I thought, man, I might not ever finish this. And finally, one day, I luckily found the exit to it. But now that they've added the waypoint, it's so much better, and now this exit's just so easy. So if you get stuck here, just use the waypoint, it'll show you exactly where to go. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there was even maybe a secret level hidden somewhere in one of these portals that you could access. I don't know, because I never found it. But if you want a challenge, don't use that waypoint button on this level, but this thing was torment when it first came out, just to try to make it out of it. And it really annoyed the hell out of me. So now, let's go and talk about boss enemies. So, every single boss battle in this game pretty much all starts out the same. Where you enter a room, and then all of a sudden tons of different enemies spawn all over the place, and you're locked inside, and then you have to fight the boss. And now most bosses end up teleporting all over the place, and then they have different attacks that they use, and the enemies keep pestering you, so you can't actually really focus on defeating the boss. Now, first boss you bump into is a sorcerer. Now he shoots fireballs, has a laser attack, and also shoots these blue fireballs at you and teleports all over the place, and it's just a general bullet sponge. And it looks very similar to, like, the Chaos Marine or the Aspiring Champions. Then the next boss that you bump into is this frickin' bird prick here called the Lord of Change. And now he has an attack where he randomly just hits you, and you can't seem to dodge it no matter what you do. If he uses it on you, I think you just can't be in his line of sight. Where these pink flames come all over you, and it just immediately deletes your health. Like, even if you're jumping all over the place, jumping around, he can still manage to hit you with this thing. And just a really big pain in the butt to have to fight. And you're going to find a lot of times that you're going to be fighting with him, so you try to just get in to get some quick damage and run away, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're dead. Because he just hit you with his purple flame BS. So, the best way to fight him is to kind of just try to pester him, to kind of just not be in his sight, pop out and take a couple little hits on him, and then disappear. This can be hard with all the other enemies who are constantly around you. So, the very best way I found to defeat this prick is if there is a power-up item somewhere in the arena where you're fighting him, is you want to try to go for that and then just focus him. So you're going to see in the next clip here, I went and grabbed this power-up, which I think was the Aura of Destruction, and then I just jumped on him with the melting gun, and watch how quickly I just fry his health when he's at 100 right here. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, the melting gun is definitely OP, especially once you have a power-up with it. Like, look at that, boom. He's pretty much now done. Then I can easily kill him and easily beat the level. This was also playing on hard as well. But yeah, don't take this guy lightly. He is a freaking prick. Definitely the most hardest boss to beat in this game, in my opinion. And the game, just like they like to repeat enemies, they like to make you have to fight these boss battles several times. So next we have the Great Unclean One. And now he's basically like the little tiny toad dude you see running around. I think they're called gurglings. And now you might notice I threw something at him here. That is a vortex grenade, one of the special power-ups. And now this thing is super powerful. You very rarely find them, so if you do, make sure you save them for emergency uses or for bosses like this. But now this Great Unclean One, he is a straight up bullet sponge. And I do believe he actually boss spawns in these girdlings too while you're fighting. He has several attacks where he spews a bunch of acid everywhere. And he has another one where he like shoots like this wave out of his sword at you, but you can jump over that one if you are fast enough. And do watch out for the acid that he throws, because if you are near it and you step on it, it'll also hurt you after the fact. So this guy is pretty nasty. He takes a lot of bullets. Now this is the very final boss battle right here. So in this boss battle, you're fighting the final sorcerer. And he's just basically like a souped up version of the first sorcerer spawn. His name's like Tumulus Samuel. Guess blood must have really bad acid reflux or something, man. And now when you're fighting him, you have to fight him in 3 different waves. And he always spawns one of the other bosses too during each of these waves that you have to defeat before you can actually damage him. While with all these other enemies who are all around you, attacking you, he's just a general nuisance. Is just basically a way nastier version of the sorcerer that you have to fight over and over again until you can finally actually defeat him. Now there's a power up for unlimited ammo, so if you find that, it's a great idea to use the grab a gun on him, and then you'll just basically fry his health very quickly. But now, that will be it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Big Papa Spur of 187. Do like this video if you found it useful, and consider subscribing if you'd be interested in more gaming content. And don't forget, guys, to make sure that you have fun gaming. So now, Boltgun is a game where I'd have to say is an absolute must-play. It is really not a hard game to recommend, and I give it a 9.5 out of 10. Definitely check this one out. Peace.